Welcome back to another intriguing, exciting episode of the Health Up podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, your well-seerge, your mind coach, and your joyful journey mentor, as well as nutritionist. This podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today I've got a special guest on the show. It is Brent Michael Phillips, an ex-MIT engineer, or you could say he's still in that space. He's still in the IT space, but he's really very much sharing what he's created around quantum healing. So he gets deep into what quantum healing is. It's beyond the physical reality. It's how he has healed himself. So yes, he pretty much tried everything that was known at the time when he was paralyzed, and he stumbled across this energetic type of healing, which he is re-engineered and put back together, as engineers do, is, I guess, reverse engineer it, as we say. And he has come up with his methodology on how you can consciously heal yourself. So he shares his story, other stories that have applied, or other success stories that have applied his methodology or his way of healing, utilizing quantum energy or quantum fields, and he'll explain more in detail in the podcast. So without much further ado, I'd love to welcome you into the discussion I'm having with Brent Michael Phillips.
Welcome on the Me&My Health Up podcast. How are you, Brent?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Fantastic. Really great to have you on, particularly around your field of expertise and what you bring to the listener today. So I won't go into too much more other than I'd love you to share with the listener how you've arrived at what you're doing today. So that backstory would be great.
Yeah, it's funny that I'm the first to admit that I never thought I'd be doing anything like this. Oh my gosh, seems almost crazy. Because growing up, I was very much your typical nerd. I loved technology. I loved the early video games. I loved sci-fi and things like that, right? And when it came time for me to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, it was an easy choice because the one thing I really was great at that I could get paid for was programming computers. That I'm probably the only kid that asked for an assembly language reference book for his 13th birthday. So, I grew up with computers and loved computers, and I wanted to be a video game developer. That was my big passion. So long story short, I went to college at MIT, and that totally changed my life because at MIT, I discovered the internet, which of course sounds funny today, but back when I got there, it was still the 80s. No one had heard of the internet. And so I made that the focus of my studies. I became a specialist in networking. I stayed at MIT, got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and was in the PhD program. And that's when the internet boom hit. And I thought, hey, this is my gold rush, right? I was one of the top internet engineers in the world right at the start of the internet boom. And I had job offers from Microsoft and Oracle and all these companies, Netscape even, but I wanted to do my own thing. And so I started a company with my lifelong best friend to make websites. And we got off to a good start. Did you know our very first website that I ever built in my life, other than like Brent's homepage, was the website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation in 1995. So we did the first website for Nissan Motors. We did the first website for Disneyland. We were doing a lot of big projects. And we started a second company to make online games, which was our real passion. That's what we really wanted to do. And things went really well at first. We had a publisher, we had funding, we had a team, we were hitting the deadlines. And what blew it all up was I was pushing myself so hard that this was my baby, this was my dream. I was willing to do anything to be successful. And I was at the office, no joke, 80, 90, 100 hours a week, year round, no breaks, no holidays, no vacations, just work. And after a couple of years of that, my body started to break down. I started to have really severe pain and movement limitations. And long story short, I spent the next 3 years in conventional physical therapy, but I didn't get better. I just got worse. And it all blew up in 1998 when I went through my first dark night of the soul. And that's when everything goes wrong in your life at the same time. And within just a couple months, first, we lost our publisher for the game company. So the game ended up being released about half finished, which of course it wasn't very successful because it was only half finished, right? So that was its own disaster. Then when I finally, after years of working through the chain of doctors, I got to see one of the top doctors in the world for my pain and problems. And long story short, I expected him to have some kind of therapy or cure for me. After we were done with our appointment, he just said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips, but there's no chance you can ever recover. You'll always be in pain and you'll never be able to work again." And he recommended me for lifetime disability when I was just 27 years old. So that was pretty devastating. And then when I shared that with my best friend and business partner, I expected him to be all, "Hey, Brent, we're best friends. We'll get through it together. We're partners. I didn't expect that he'd say, well, if you can't work like you used to, you have no place here. So I got fired from my job as the founder of the two companies, and he played legal games and stole the companies from me. And there were lawsuits, and it was devastating. And I found out right after that, the reason he did it was he had been secretly seeing the woman that I was dating and crazy in love with. So when I got the diagnosis from the doctor, he saw that as an opportunity just to get rid of me, both as a business partner and as a romantic rival. So long story short, at 27, I was living with incurable chronic pain, living with my parents. I was broke because my companies had been stolen from me. I was told I could never recover. And let's not forget that I lost my lifelong best friend and the woman I thought I was going to marry. So that was a real wipeout. And at first, I was depressed. I was day drinking. I was using drugs. I was suicidal. But I had a friend of mine turn me on to positive thinking. Nowadays, we call it the law of attraction, but it's the same stuff, right? Been around for decades. And so he convinced me to start reading positive thinking books and going to different seminars and masterminds and all the stuff you see in The Secret. I did all that stuff. Power words on my wall, mantras every day, a vision board, mastermind group, right? Telling looking myself in the mirror, you're a millionaire, right? All that stuff. And what I found was I was this gung-ho positive thinking warrior for about 6 months, but nothing changed other than I was spending a bunch of money on stuff that didn't work, right? And so I kind of put that on the back burner. And the next thing I got into was alternative medicine, as I had another friend who said, hey, Brent, sometimes the doctors don't know what they're doing. They're really bad with cases like yours, chronic long-term injuries. And so she turned me on to alternative medicine. And that actually, I was really excited at first. I thought I was going to find an answer there. And so I spent the next 5 years living with my parents, spending every penny I had from my disability and going deep into credit card debt to finance all this alternative therapy. And I was doing everything you could imagine. I was seeing Chinese doctors and getting the cupping and the scraping and herbs and naturopaths that put me on cleanses and a homeopath that was using remedies. I mean, I could talk for hours. So basically, I spent 5 years as a full-time patient running around getting treatment. But eventually, after about 5 years of this, I hit a wall that the banks wouldn't give me any more credit cards. I had no money to pay anything off. I couldn't work. I had no assets. And as a last-ditch effort to preserve my disability benefits, which was my only income, I agreed to have an experimental surgery. And had the surgery cured me of my pain and I lived happily ever after, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on someone else's podcast. But the surgery was a disaster. And when I woke up from the surgery, my right arm was paralyzed. And so that was kind of my rock bottom, that it just seemed like there was no way out. And it was shortly after that, and afterwards, they put me through physical therapy and all these different machines and processes trying to get my arm to move, and it just wouldn't go. After about almost 6 months of failed therapies, I was, at the end of my rope, dangerously suicidal. I had no options, nowhere to go, couldn't borrow more money, couldn't pay my bills. And then I met this woman who was a healer. Her name was Terry. And I had done a little bit of energy healing before. I'd done some hands-on work. I'd worked with a bunch of Reiki people. I had had pranic healing done on me, things like that. And so I didn't expect anything to happen. And I only went to see Terry because my Aunt Lauren was friends with her and she agreed to pay for it. I'm like, I'm not going to spend money on a healer. How crazy is that, right? I'm broke. I have nothing. And so I was like, okay, if you're going to pay for it, I'll go do it. So I remember I drove over to see Terry and she was like, hey, Brent, come on in. And she explained to me that basically the subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. And long story short, if you're full of subconscious blocks, it's going to be nearly impossible to achieve your goals. And she introduced me to the process of muscle testing, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And she's checking me for all these blocks and doing this meditation with these clearings. And it was all very interesting, but I'm like, I'm not here to talk about my feelings, right? I'm here because I'm in pain and I can't move my arm. But she's asking me about my relationship with my mother and what happened with my friend and childhood stuff, right? Doing all this stuff. So it was interesting, but seemed pointless. And then at the end of our session, she said, okay, Brent, we're going to take care of your arm now. And I laughed. I'm like, yeah, you and what army lady, right? And so she said, just relax. This will only take a minute. And she kind of closed her eyes and went into a trance. And I was just sitting there on the couch with, across the room, looking out the window, thinking about maybe what I want to get for lunch on the way home, right? I was like, okay, this was interesting. What's next? And it was the weirdest thing. All at once, two things happened at the same time. One was I felt a burning sensation on the right side of my neck. The other was there was this loud crack and pop in my elbow. I would say it's very similar to the cracks and pops we all get with aging, but like times 100. My whole body shook. I was like, whoa. And I remember Terry's, sitting a few feet from me. She just says, okay, dear, let's try that arm again. I was like, okay. And I was like, oh my God. I could move my arm again. It really was a legitimate miracle. And that was the day that this very skeptical, pragmatic, nerdy technical engineer type decided that, wow, there really is something to this woo-woo stuff. Because I had experienced it for myself. And I told her, please teach me everything you know. This is what I want to do with my life. But I want to be honest with everyone that it's very easy to take away the wrong message. It was not like all my problems were solved in an hour, then my life was perfect. That's a fantasy. What did happen was my paralyzed arm from the surgery instantly healed, never gave me a problem again. That really happened. What did not happen is all the pain and problems. And because I had, at the time, undiagnosed autism, I was suffering from chemical poisoning. I could go on and on. I had a lot of severe trauma from childhood experiences. None of that all instantly healed like magic, but my paralyzed arm did. And that gave me a basis to stand on and go, hey, there really is something here. And it was kind of funny. When I first started studying healing, I was a little arrogant about it. I thought this will be easy, right? As in high school, I was a National Merit Scholar, valedictorian of my class. I had a perfect 5.0 GPA across 6 years at MIT. So rare, I've never known another person who did that. Not saying they're not out there, just I never heard of it. And so I thought learning healing would be easy, but I was a disaster. I was so bad at it. Why? I was totally stuck in my mind. And to be a good intuitive and healer, you have to be able to feel your body. And so I took a very different approach than most people. And when Terry learned healing, she took a couple seminars and it was just natural for her. It was very easy. That didn't happen for me. Instead, I said, okay, I got to use the tools I have. So I decided to reverse engineer the masters. I thought, hey, I'll go around, I'll start with Terry, I'll find all the best teachers and healers and sages and intuitives and shamans and all that, and I'm going to learn from them, but I'm also going to deconstruct what they're doing and figure out how it works. Because that's pretty much what they taught me at MIT. You take a system, you take it apart, figure out how it works, and then you put it back together and make it better. And that's what was my goal. And when I started this process, I thought it might take me 6 months. Well, it took me 11 years, but eventually I got there. And it was a long process. In other words, again, it was not like 1 hour later, everything was perfect. But with a lot more work and a lot more practice, I was able to make progress on all those other things. I was able to reduce my pain. It never totally eliminated, but it reduced significantly. I was able to start working again. I was able to start making money. I was able to start exercising. I started dating again. I even got married and then divorced and then married again. All these things that happened. But little by little, things started to click. And really, I think Terry nailed it that most of our issues come out of the subconscious. We're all deeply patterned and conditioned by things that happened in the womb, by our early childhood experiences, by our adult experiences to a lesser extent. And we're all kind of trapped in our own patterns of conditioned thinking and traumatic response. And really what she helped me to do was set me free from that. Because again, I tried all the typical positive thinking. That didn't help me at all. Just waste of time and money, in my opinion. But I think I was a little harsh and judgmental because it does work for some people. But did you know there's been research done on the law of attraction? And the number that it came up with was 1% of people that do your typical positive thinking law of attraction feel they get good results. So that's terrible, right? Would you want to drive a car with a 99% failure rate? I wouldn't. Would you want to live in a house with a 99% failure rate? No, thank you. But we tolerate it for self-improvement. And so this is what I found after a lot of work and a lot of study, a lot of time and money spent across over a decade. What I found was really self-improvement and energy work is just technology. It's a set of, there are laws of the universe that govern how it works. And if we can understand those laws and apply them, we can get it to do useful things for us. The good metaphor is electricity, that ancient humans weren't stupid. They just didn't have modern technology. So they were aware of electricity. They could see lightning bolts in the sky during a storm. They could see the fires that resulted. They could touch something in the winter and get a static shock. So humans knew what electricity was, but we didn't know how it worked and we didn't know how to put it to work for us. But then that all changed in the 19th century. We figured out how it worked. Tesla and Marconi and Edison and all those guys, they figured it out. And then we developed technology, and now electricity supports us in our lives. It powers the lights. It runs our computers. It runs our phones. It runs your microwave. A lot of us drive electric cars. And what I see myself doing right now is I'm showing people the basics of consciousness technology. That all through history, we're aware we have consciousness, aren't we? There it is, right? You're here. I'm here. You know, there's a room around me. So clearly we're aware of it, But just like ancient peoples and electricity, most of us have no idea what that consciousness is or how it works or how to apply it to get a specific result. And that's where I come in. I'm like, hey, I can show you how to do this. And it's funny that my training was all in software, and doing healing seems like an opposite. It's really not, because really the subconscious mind is just software. Greg Braden wrote a great book called The God Code, you may have heard of. And what he showed us was essentially that our DNA is nothing more than computer software. It's just a big pile of ones and zeros. And so that's what the subconscious is. It's just a huge pile of software. And what I learned from Terry and my mentor, Carl, was pretty simple, that we all run around inside of us with a program for every aspect of our life, and it's coded into the subconscious. So in the same way on your computer, you got your email program, you got your web browser, you could play solitaire. Those are all just software that the computer runs to create an output. That's your life with money. That's your life with health, with your relationships, that it's all coded inside of us. And if you don't know how to change the code, you're kind of screwed. Because what are you going to do? Most people don't know how to write code. And it would be like if you couldn't run Microsoft Word, but Microsoft wouldn't help you. You're just dead in the water. What I want everyone to know is you've been trained to live backwards. And that's why we struggle. That's why so many of us feel lost. We're overwhelmed by uncertainty. And for sure, I can say we are at the greatest time of uncertainty in my entire life. There's enormous political uncertainty. There's huge economic insecurity. What's going to happen with AI? Is there going to be World War III? We're running out of oil. We're running out of water. We're running out of arable land. There's all these issues going on. So we're at this time of incredibly fast-paced change and tremendous uncertainty. And one thing I have found is for people that don't have the spiritual background and don't have the technology to cope with it, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how people survive day to day without the grounding and tools and knowledge that I learned from my spiritual study, especially parents with children. My gosh, the stress would just be almost overwhelm you. If you really thought that life was just a bunch of random chemicals bouncing around that were separate beings competing for scarce resources, if you really believe that, that sucks, because your life is going to be a mess of stress and suffering. I'm not blaming anyone. Again, it's like saying your computer isn't working and you don't know how to fix it. You're just stuck. What I want everyone to know is there's a way out. That this is not magic, though it has magical aspects to it. Do miracles happen? Of course they do. In fact, to me, miracles are almost mundane. I've seen so many of them. But again, I can't promise that. What I've learned is pretty simple. We don't pick the miracles. They pick us. But if you're willing to take accountability for your life, if you're willing to say, hey, this consciousness in my head is a great gift from the divine. Our consciousness, I think, is the most powerful gift we humans are given. If you're willing to take a little time to understand the nature of it and how it works and how you can actually use it and apply it to create useful results, you'll be at a huge advantage. Imagine building a house without any electricity. Would you want to live in that house? I wouldn't. No, thank you. No heat, no air conditioning, right? You can't plug in your appliances. You can't have light. That sucks. And to me, living a life in the modern world without an understanding of consciousness is like that. You can survive, but it's going to be miserable. And the uncertainty is such a big thing, because one of the things I found is that if you ask me to define how do you measure someone's consciousness, which I think is a great question, the answer is pretty simple. Your level of consciousness is reflected by your level of comfort in the face of uncertainty. That's what it comes down to. And with this technology, you can build up and make your consciousness stronger and bigger. That's what I want to offer. I don't know how to make all the problems in life go away. I got some solutions, but I do not have all the answers. But I'll reflect on a teaching I heard from my late mentor, Carl. He would say that most people in life spend all their time trying to make their problems smaller. He would say that's okay, but also spend an equal amount of time making yourself bigger. That's what I want to offer to people. What he would say is if you're 6 feet tall and you come up to a 10-foot wall, that's really tough to get over, at least without a ladder or a rope or something, right? That's hard, almost impossible. But if you're 12 feet tall, a 10-foot wall is not that big of a deal. It just slows you down a little bit, right? But you'll get over it. And that's how I really would love people to start seeing their problems in their lives. That, yeah, your problems are real. I'm not going to say they aren't. They have real effects. But all the action taken from the ego to try to make your problem smaller can only do so much. But there's not nearly as much of a limit on how you can get. So many people, for example, try to improve their financial situation by saving money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it can only go so far. If you cut your expenses as much as you can and you're still in the red, you have to do something else. You have to make yourself bigger. And of course, what I offer is it's not for everyone because it's very scientific, very step by step, very clear and logical. Because again, I'm an engineer and a scientist, and I've taken all the woo-woo stuff and distilled it down and said, hey, you know what? The truth is 80% of what's out there is just a bunch of New Age mythology. It's not wrong, just like it's not wrong to go watch Lord of the Rings or Star Wars and enjoy the movie, right? That's not an inherently bad thing. But don't think that Luke Skywalker or Gandalf the Wizard is going to show up and fix your life. And what I look for is people that are serious about making a commitment to make real change. And really what I found is, because everyone wants to hear about the miracles, so we'll talk about that for a second, that there's really two ways I work with people. One is you can use me as a miracle slot machine. And so I've done something like 21,000 private sessions across 23 years doing this work full time and seen over 2,000 miracles. And by miracles, I mean significant life changes that don't have another explanation. One of my clients and students, his name was Steve. When I first met him about 15 years ago, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. He had polyrheumatic ascites or something, some horrible autoimmune disease that leaves you in terrible pain. He was totally disabled, couldn't work, miserable, just wanted to die. And we had one session on the phone, vanished overnight. I had another friend of mine. He had actually worked for my game company as a volunteer. His name was Eric. He had suffered from lifelong asthma. And he hated it because he couldn't go out, especially in the spring. And he was a total outdoor person. We did one session over the phone. And he goes, the next day he went on a 20-mile bike ride. And he said, Brent, normally I wouldn't get more than a mile before I'd have to turn around and go home. I had another client who was a heavy smoker. He was smoking 2 to 3 packs a day. And he lived, I think, in Maine, in a rural area where it gets freezing cold in the winter. And he was smoking indoors, and it gave his young son asthma. And his doctor said, you have to quit smoking inside or he will die. But he couldn't. And we had, again, one session over the phone, never had a craving for cigarettes again. But I want to be honest, that doesn't happen for everyone. This is not magic. The odds of hitting a miracle on the slot machine, 5 to 15%, something like that, right? So some people, it's like, hey, you put in your money, you pull the handle, maybe a miracle comes out. But that's what I used to do. And I can still do it. But now I much prefer to have a much closer relationship with my clients. What I found works close to 100% is a long-term, structured, careful process to move them forward. And that is, and I say close to 100% because I can say confidently, the only reason that my most serious clients and students don't get to where they want to be is they give up before they do. That pretty much everyone that works with me over the long term does see shifts and changes. But again, we don't pick the miracles, they pick us. So I cannot promise anyone that you'll triple your income in 6 months or instantly heal from a disease. What I can say is pretty much guaranteed, your quality of life will be better 6 months, a year, 2 years from now than it is now. Maybe your pain goes away completely. Maybe it just reduces and you manage it better. Maybe you start making a lot more money. That happens, especially with the advanced work, the third generation stuff. But not always. It's not a guarantee. I've had plenty of clients that have doubled, tripled, even 5 or 10x their income. But that doesn't always happen. One of my long-term clients and students, he's worked with me for about 7 years now. When we started, he wanted to be a billionaire and it drove him nuts. He was so obsessed with money. And we worked on it. And then it all got clear to him. It took about 2-3 years. And one day he woke up and he understood he had enough money. It was that simple. He was fine. It was just a neurosis. And he goes, wow, I never thought I could enjoy my life so much, even though his income hadn't changed at all. But again, that's just one case, right? Because what I want to do is show people how your consciousness works in the same way that if you took a caveman through a time machine, would he know how to drive your car? Could he operate your microwave, right? Could he check email on your computer? The answer is no. And it's not because the caveman is stupid. It's because the caveman doesn't understand how it works. But you could teach him, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Assuming we could find a shared language, right?
And I'm thinking
we could absolutely teach a caveman how to drive a car.
That's probably where the listener's thinking at the moment is getting their head around consciousness, because it's we don't go when we go to school, we don't learn about consciousness, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a out there subject, and I'm really keen for you to simplify it in your engineering scientific way for the listener.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I found is that, through decades of study, and, I've studied with so many incredible people all over the world. from different traditions, Buddhist philosophers and sages and shamans and intuitives and healers and all this stuff it's all just technology. And I would group all self-improvement work into what I call the 3 generations of consciousness technology. And when you look at it this way, it gets much simpler because it's overwhelming the amount of stuff that's out there now, right? With YouTube and TikTok and the web, it's just overwhelming. What it comes down to is pretty simple. In the first generation, that's your typical positive thinking law of attraction. So that's think and grow rich. That's the secret, right? Think positively, join a mastermind, say your mantras, make a vision board, and everything will be perfect in your life in 6 months. I'll say, hey, if that works for you, great, right? There are some people that get rich from winning the lottery, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's a bad strategy. So the first generation, I think, is worth doing, but on its own, it doesn't do much for most people. So things get really interesting in the second generation. That's where we start to directly work with the subconscious. That's what I learned from Terry. That's what happened that day with my elbow. She showed me how to directly access my own source code, what I call the software of your soul, your subconscious mind. And she literally debugged me like a computer program. End of the session, boom, miracle happened. So the second generation would be things like Psych-K, healing codes, emotion code, theta healing, EFT, different kinds of NLP and intuitive hypnosis too. That usually they have some way to query the subconscious, often muscle testing, or some kind of device that tells you where the blocks are, and then some kind of process to reprogram them. So EFT uses tapping. Theta healing uses the theta wave. But they're all kind of the same process. And there's hundreds, maybe thousands of modalities out there that work on that basis. They're just slightly different, right? It's kind of like when you get Mexican food, it's all the same stuff, just combined differently. So that's how I see it. And that's most of what's out there now is a second generation technology, which is great because your success rate goes up significantly when you involve the subconscious. That our success rate goes from 1% to about 30, 40%. And that's a huge difference. That's night and day, right? But I have found the second generation cannot do everything. It is awesome for physical health, emotional release, work like that. Really, really powerful. But it's not as good for a spiritual awakening, for presence, embodiment, understanding who you are and really inhabiting your body and being connected to the space around you. And that leads us into the third generation. That I learned from my late mentor, Carl Wolf, who was really a unique man in that I have not seen anyone else teaching what he did. And it's really a combination of spiritual study, a lot of non-duality in Buddhist philosophy, along with physical movements and meditation practices that all work together. The goal is to fully inhabit your body and to be connected to the space around you. And when people have that quality, we call it presence or charisma or dropping in. It's very powerful. Almost every big celebrity has it to a high degree. That's why they got to there, right? And what I learned was presence, grounding, confidence, being in your body is something you can learn, but only if you have the right technology. And so which one I use all of them depending on the person. Okay, I don't use the first generation much. Every now and then I get someone that needs positive thinking. It happens. Like, dude, you're way too negative. Go read this book and come back, right? But that's very rare. Like 2% of my clients are like that. For most people, I start with the second generation and see how far that can take us. It's easier to understand. It's easier to jump in and do the work. The trouble with the third generation is it has a steeper learning curve. It takes longer to prepare and learn to do the work. So many people aren't willing out of the box to do that. That's why I'll say, hey, start with a private session with me or one of my downloadable programs. Let's clear some blocks and you see what happens. If that doesn't do the trick, then I got this whole other toolbox we can open of learning to move differently, learning to breathe differently, learning to even how we look through our eyes at the world. Most people don't realize it, but you're generally looking at the world through only a third of your eye. People that are very mental, intellectual, abstract like me, we look at the tops of our eyes and we don't even know it. Only the top third. People that are very emotional, very connected to others, see through the middle third. And people that are very grounded and practical, salt of the earth, they see through the bottom third of their eyes. And we're not even aware of it. Many of us have known people that talk out of one side of their mouth. That's a symptom of a deep psychological subconscious block. So the movement work, the most advanced work can open you up to inhabit your whole body. So you speak with your whole mouth. You see with your whole eye, if that makes sense. And the world does become more vivid and more interesting. You'll see this in the spiritual literature when people talk about awakening, that this is not an escape from life. It's an embrace of life, to fully live in your body, to be present, to feel everything that's happening, There is a divine flow. You might say that life often feels like we got thrown in a river and we're struggling to keep our head above water. What we don't realize is if you just relax and float on your back, the river's going to take you exactly where you need to be. So some of it is stop struggling and fighting so much. Dang it, you're fine. You just got the idea in your head that you're not fine, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, everyone's a little different. And it's interesting, the way I work is different than it used to be. For a long time, the model in self-improvement was you pay people for information, right? You pay Tony Robbins, you go to a seminar. He tells you to think positively, or Bob Proctor, whoever you like, right? I love all these guys. I just think they're incomplete solutions, but I love all of them. They all got a piece of the puzzle. So in the old days, people would come to my seminars, pay money to learn the system. They pay for sessions or download programs, right? And then I created a community almost as an afterthought. What I found was the community is really the driver of the biggest change. We all need like-minded people who are trained and aware at our level to work forward with. And that's what I focus on now. So what I do now is I talk to people to see if they're a good fit for the community. Then when you join the community, I'll go, hey, this is the program you need, or this is the one you need. So the buying information comes later. It's secondary. It's really, are you willing to show up and do the work? Honestly, that's the difference. That's what separates the men from the boys. Again, there's nothing wrong with being a seminar junkie. I used to be, but being a seminar junkie is not going to change your life. Unlikely. It's entertainment. I like to say that being a seminar junkie is nothing wrong with it. It's like sitting in a hot tub. I love to sit in a hot tub. Who doesn't, right? It's relaxing. It feels nice. But I don't expect my hot tub to make me rich or to heal my cancer, right? So if you're willing to take accountability for your life, learn some new skills to use your consciousness, and then apply it, you will make a breakthrough. And that's no different than anything. If you want to learn guitar, how does it happen? You can't just go to a weekend of guitar camp and come out shredding. No, you got to practice, and you got to have a teacher that can correct you and guide you. You do that, anybody can learn to play guitar. Unless you have really severe disabilities, anyone can learn. And consciousness is like that. The difference is everyone can learn to use their consciousness. So what I tell all my clients and students is they ask me, Brent, is it really possible to heal my pain or heal my body or make money or find love or find purpose? The answer is yes. The only question is, are you going to give up before you get to your goal? And that's really, it's the only reason people fail.
And that's hence why you found more success with the collective consciousness. And
yes.
Yeah. They're tapping into a consciousness greater than themselves, which is,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's why the community is vital.
Yes. Yeah.
I used to sell the information and the community was an afterthought.
Yes. Yeah.
Now what I offer people is the community first.
Yes. Yeah.
And the information is an afterthought.
Yeah.
Pretty simply, you find the right group of people and you work with them, you will change.
And the work
you will move forward.
Much easier than by yourself.
It's much easier, much more fun.
Yes. Yeah.
They found that with workouts.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That I used to do CrossFit when I was younger. And I always worked out harder in the group at CrossFit than I did at the gym alone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got better results, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
I got stronger, leaner, all that got better.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I've never known anyone that successfully lone wolfed it.
Absolutely.
People, especially nowadays with social media and YouTube and all that, they seem to think that if I can just watch the right video and give me the right information, that everything will change overnight. No, that's like winning the lottery. It happens, but don't count on it. Here's the solution. Find the right people, then learn what they have to teach you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Everyone's trying to figure out who's the right system. What's the best process, right? I learned this in martial arts. As a young man, I was very active in martial arts, got a black belt in the closet, et cetera, et cetera. And people would ask me, Brent, which is the best martial art? Who kicks the most ass, right? Should I learn Aikido or Taekwondo or Jiu-Jitsu or whatever? What I learned in martial arts is simple. Don't pick the style, pick the teacher in the class. Find the people that you want to train with and learn whatever style they're teaching. That's what works.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I approach healing now. And now, in the old days, anyone that bought my programs could join the community. That's no longer the case. You got to talk to me first now.
Absolutely.
And if I don't think you're a good fit, I'm going to send you away. Not that I don't want you to heal.
Yeah.
But one, I don't want you to spend time and money on something that's not right for you. And two, I don't want a bad fit to drag down the whole rest of the group. So I'm kind of protective of my community. And for people that want to hear the numbers, it's about half the people I talk to are a good fit. And again, the people that tend to be a good fit, too much in your head, too much thinking, too much trying to control the world. Many people I work with are intelligent, educated, driven, hardworking, but their life turned to shit and they don't know why. And the thing that I've gotten into recently is using artificial intelligence to enhance healing, which is a really powerful thing. Don't want to crack that can of worms too deep right now, but that has been my primary research pursuit for the last few years. Because I don't know what it was for you, but for me, when I was at MIT in the 80s and 90s, everyone talked about artificial intelligence, but it was always 20 years away. So in 1990, it was 20 years away. In 2015, it was 20 years away. In 2021, it was 20 years away. And then in 2022, it was here. So, and what I found is ways of combining the two, that no robot's going to replace a human healer, but it can do things the human can't. And humans can do things the robot can't. What I found is if you know how to combine the two, I can get you to your goal even faster. So for example, I found I used to spend some time with people going over their supplements, and I still do that to some degree. But now I have them send me the list ahead of time. I throw it into an AI. And then I interpret it with my experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's, of course, you guys are welcome, everyone listening. Go dump it into AI, go crazy, right? But you need to have it within a human context because AI hallucinates. It's overconfident. It will give you, 9 times out of 10, it gives you good advice, but that 1 out of 10 can cause a huge amount of harm. So that's why I say we need the two. You need an experienced human that knows what they're doing to manage your process. But within that, day to day, the AI is an incredible aid. And you put the two together, and I'm seeing some phenomenal results with my students.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So,
and again, 10%, you'll see a miracle pretty quick. Miracle slot machine, you won. Congratulations. The other 90%, you're going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
But how is that different than anything? You want a good marriage, guess what? You're going to have to work at it. You want to build a company, make money, guess what? You're going to have to work at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just the nature of being human.
So for those listeners out there that were thinking that they'd like to find out more about what you do and how they could become part of this community, how do they connect with you? How are they best to connect?
The easiest way is just go to my website at awakeningdynamics.com. You could also look me up on YouTube. Just type in Brent Michael Phillips, Awakening Dynamics. And I have 2 resources on my website that are a great way to start for people. Number 1 is my YouTube channel. So if you're a dip your toe in the water kind of person and want to learn more first, no problem. I got like 250 videos for you to watch. I'll keep you busy for a while, right? I got dozens of different series on different topics, anger, health, healthy teeth, bad relationships, you name it, different kinds of meditation you've never experienced. So that's a great for the tire kickers. I don't mind at all. For people that are like, hey, I think this might be for me. If you're serious about actually using and applying this, what I'm going to offer to you and all of your listeners is I'll talk to you for 20 minutes for free, no obligation. I just want to get to a sense of who you are as a person, where you're at, where you want to be, and why you're not there yet. And I will give you either one of 2 results from the call. 1 is you're a good fit. Here's how I think you should join our community. 2 is I don't think you're a good fit. Go see this other person instead. I think they fit better for you. So for anyone that I say, hey, you're not a good fit, I'm not going to leave you out in the cold.
I will get help.
I'm going to do the best I can to aim you and go, hey, this I think will work better for you.
Redirect them.
Right. Redirect them because, I used to try to fix everybody. What I learned was I can't fix everybody.
Absolutely.
But I can fix some people. Right. And now that I'm a little older, because when I started this, I was in my early 30s. Now, let's say a lot older than that. I don't want to waste my time running in circles with people that I can't help.
100%.
And I'll warn everyone, I'm intense. I work at a fast pace. I'm obsessed with truth. I have no tolerance for bullshit. So I'm going to ask you deep questions that cut to the core. And if you're the kind of person that's not comfortable with that, you're probably not a good fit. That's why I say I help a lot of desperate people that really, really want to change. I'll tell you also, the other thing I look for is you either have to have time or money. Because if you don't have either, how are you going to move forward?
100%.
Like if you wanted to play guitar and told your teacher, I can't afford to buy a guitar and I have no time to practice. He just throws his hands in the air. I'm sorry, there's not much I can do here, right? So if you have the money but not the time, I got a program for you. No, I got you covered. If you have very little money but a lot of time, I got a program for you. If you're somewhere in the middle, I got a program for you. I just have to have something to work with.
And I'll include those links to what you've just mentioned, your YouTube channel, your website, in the show notes, so the listeners can go directly to those links and connect with you, Brent. Really appreciate your time coming on the show today. Really enlightening in terms of the subject matter of consciousness and how, if you can upgrade your consciousness or upgrade your software, how you could heal yourself. So
it's like a caveman with a car. this incredible, powerful machine, but he has no idea how to use it. That's most of us. That was me too.
You need the software to run it.
I had no smart. I had all this education. I had no idea how to inhabit my body or
True.
use my consciousness.
Very true.
And that's what I want to share. And it's not as hard as you think.
Awesome.
Really, anybody can.
Yeah, but really appreciate your time, and thank you for enlightening the listeners. And I'll include those links in the show notes, listeners, so you can go directly and catch up with Brent and see if you're the right fit. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Health Up podcast.
Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand Me&My Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. Me&My Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, Me&My Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of Me&My Health Up.